Tujhe Maafi. Shukran. Ms. Sumita Sharma, contributing editor, India Ahead News, and of course, Mr. Rahul Banerjee, founder, president, and Rashika Agarwal, the very smart duo over here. Please show yourself to the audience. A big applause, ladies and gentlemen, for the. Did I miss you out? I would request the lady to kindly stand up and introduce herself. A big applause for the lady. Chronicle. Yes, ma'am.
Sumi Gupta, editor-in-chief, Tatsat Chronicle.
A big hand to her. Well, she has certainly been a cynosure for a lot of philanthropic activities in the capital. Ladies and gentlemen, the keynote session today is being taken by His Excellency, the Ambassador of Federal Republic of Germany to India, Mr. Walter Linder, addressing the subject of navigating the future, Europe, development cooperation, and is there a need for new diplomacy? Today, unfortunately, by stroke of destiny, I guess, we do not have His Excellency, the Ambassador of France, over here because he had to accompany the Indian Foreign Minister to Europe. Well, we shall miss him. We've conveyed our message that Raisina House at Lalit is going to miss the Excellency. Today, I believe that there are about 1.2 billion young people between the age of 15 to 24 years, accounting for 16% of the world population. Now that's what's called the youth budge. 90% living in the developing countries. The youth issues, I've spoken about it earlier, and I feel very impassioned when I speak about this particular subject. Seeing such brilliant, smart youth of the country is not there in the capital, but when you visit India, through the cross-section, whether it's the Himalayas, or it's the jungles, or the beautiful natural habitats of northeast, or it's the lovely desertified regions of Rajasthan, or you go even to more resplendent south, that is to where the lakes are and the lovely tea plantations and gardens of southern India, or the most mesmerizing ghats and the enchanting temples of India. Well, everywhere you find the youth contributing, let me tell you, in a very big measure. So, big hand for the youth of India today. Well, I dare say, when I say youth of India, I certainly do take into consideration the youth, the global cross-section, of course. And we will not forget Yusufi, the very smart children are students. I call them the children of God. Very smart, in fact, segment from Afghanistan with us at Amity University, Uttar Pradesh at Noida. I can only say that these issues, which are very important and rather vital and significant, happen to be the gender equality, the good health, combating poverty and hunger, environmental issues, and climate change. When I was talking to some diplomats, not here, but overseas, during my assignment in Africa, there's a country, beautiful country called Botswana, which is north of South Africa, south of Zambia, and well, it's east of Namibia and west of Zimbabwe. That's enough to get your geographical instincts going. Let me tell you, youth anywhere in the country, when you discuss with them, they have the same mind, and each and every child who spoke to me over there during the interview had the same points, had exactly the same points. So if you involve the youth in decision making, and I conveyed this to the United Nations Secretary General when we had a chance when he was getting sworn in, year before last, he's got the second term now. We did convey this to him through the track to diplomacy. I must say that from 2015 to 30 alone, contributing, ladies and gentlemen, to the resilience, innovative solutions, and driving the social progress uh, in all these matters and also the inspiring political change. Not only are we mobilizing to advance the sustainable development goals which have been enunciated by the United Nations, but also to improve the lives and the health of humanity on this beautiful planet. So don't get away when someone tries to tell you that Corona and Omicron or whatever is, an abominable occurrence, and it has uh, done, so much of damage, to America. Notwithstanding, we have lost a lot of people, our kith and kin, our brethren. We have lost not only the armed forces, but certainly our friends too, all over the world. And we are not going to forget this. It's very difficult, in fact, to perpetuate in times which it has caused so much of havoc. There's only one word for this, which has never happened earlier, and that is Armageddon of the virus. Well, the United Nations certainly recognizes the young people and the right holders, that promotes and facilitates transparency, accountability, and responsiveness. The four most important things I feel, which, well, certainly is not only applicable to United Nations, that is the SDGs, it's applicable to you in your life. And that happens to be audit, accountability, monitoring, and enforcement. Well, I can go on and on, but I shall not take too much of time, and I shall just cut down by talking about six things, and then I shall say that's the end of it. I shall cut down my entire speech or my talk. Imperative that the United Nations Secretary General prepares an annual action plan, making specific member nations responsible to execute the SDGs. He should just do it. It sounds like the, what is that, Rashika? The Nike? Is it Nike? Just do it. He should just do it. I was nominated by my country to represent India at the United Nations. Unfortunately, things didn't happen because they thought that it's better to avoid the devil because he will move heaven and earth and make sure that things are implemented on fast track. Well, we certainly do believe that things can be done, but things are not really moving the way they should at the United Nations. Very unfortunate. Exemplary mentors in values and ethics, they have to become prominent. Enthusiastic motivators, spirited and influencing, they have to be the promoters. Emulative trailblazers, pioneers and innovators, so that you can be the trendsetters. When you indulge yourself in path-breaking, game-changing, then you are the trendsetter, and the people follow you. Because you are the person who has the innovation behind you to make sure that the world will take your initiative and will be able to learn a lesson. Path-breaking developers, ingenious, futuristic, to be creative. Brilliant communicators, to be articulate and sharp, be eloquent. And ladies and gentlemen, the youth, I believe, must focus on what I always say and cliche, your vision, your values, and your vitality. If you have the vision given to you, the good embedded value system, and you have the vitality and the vigor to prosecute your responsibilities with the land, there's no one stopping you. And you must create a mass movement and awareness revolution in whichever country you are, India or outside. I firmly believe each one of you, I'm saying the last few words for the youth to remember, believe in the aims of their sustainable development goals fundamentally. Practice it religiously and live by it virtuously. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to call upon Ms. Smita Sharma. Thank you. Over to you.
Hi, very good afternoon to everyone. This is Smita Sharma here. Happy to be back again with the young scholars of Raisina House. Rahul, of course, is a good friend here, and Ambassador Walter J. Lindner. Without any delay, let me have you join us on the stage. He's somebody who needs no introduction, the German ambassador to India. And I actually think of him as the cultural ambassador of brand Incredible India. Because for those of you who follow him on his social media handles, you will actually explore so much of India through his eyes and his lens, which many of us are not even aware of, being proper Dilliwalas, being in the NCR region. So he helps me explore through the maze of Delhi. And before I take forward this discussion, I believe Ambassador Lindner would like to share a few words and his opening thoughts, because I think the conversation that we are having today, it's at a very opportune moment. It's very timely when you're talking about a leadership change in Germany, when you're talking about expanding India-European relations and the path forward. Ambassador, let me begin by asking you to make your introductory remarks.
Thank you very much. You make me blush. But it's good to be here, and I must say, maybe I shouldn't say, but I'm a different diplomat. I say what I think. When I came here, I really didn't really know what kind of event this is. I knew the Raisina House. I thought this is something with the Raisina dialogue, which is not true. But I knew there would be youth, and there would be young people and talking about the future. And I thought, count me in, because that's very dear to my heart wherever I go. And as you said, I go from Bhubaneswar to Trivandrum to up to Leh to you name it, you know. And wherever I go, I try to meet young people, be it in universities or be it rickshaw pullers, you know, or taxi drivers or whatever, because I want to see what's the DNA of India, as you know. And so I knew there would be students here, so let me not be the typical person on the dais who says, you know, since I have the floor, I use it. I want to keep this short, and I want to, rather than discuss with you and listen to your questions, because it's like family. She has been in my house also often, and we have done a lot of interviews on topics. I thought we talk about Ukraine right now when I saw you, but it's a different.
It's on the list.
It's a different topic today. Okay, so I'm rather open to your questions, and will not make opening remarks, because you have heard so many opening remarks in your life. That you rather want to go into action and see how I react on her questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Let's have a round of applause for the ambassador to welcome him in. Thank you so much. Hello, and a warm welcome to all those tuning in to this special discussion here, the special broadcast also on India Ahead, the Youth for SDGs Vision 2030, presented by Raisina House in collaboration, of course, with Tatsat Chronicle, among others, and the German embassy here in India. At the moment, with me on the stage is the German ambassador, Walter J. Lindner. Now, if you look at the India-European cooperation itself, this year actually we celebrate 60 years of those diplomatic relations with the European Economic Community, as it was known then. And it's an important time. You know, India was among the first countries, also the first Asian country really, to establish this diplomatic tie. Now with so much happening, there's been a change in leadership in Germany. With Europe, of course, we are working also closely on the Indo-Pacific itself, and then there's the shadow of the Ukrainian crisis. Plus, all the questions from the young audience here, the youth, the scholars, the students, would be more than welcome. Ambassador Lindner, if I could start with you a little bit on the Indo-German front, and then I'll expand it to the Indo-European ties itself. The Merkel era is now over. What the political era that has now begun, what is the one significant change that you see shaping up in the bilateral front?
I think the relationship between India and Germany always have been very good and close. But the tactical or the strategic angle is relatively new. As we move on, we see that the world is more and more and more connected. For you, it's important what happens in the Ukraine, and for us, it's important what happens in Taiwan, in the Strait of Taiwan, or close to the between India and China. So the world is interconnected. This is an old saying. Of course, you know that. But in this digital world, and in a world where things are happening faster and faster and faster, we are all a big family. So we have to behave of course, we are already in the United Nations, a big family, but also in the bilateral relationship, climate issues can only be solved together by all the nations. And you're talking about India. India is so big, 1.4 billion, so every fifth person on this planet is Indian. So without India, you can't solve any of the global challenges, be it poverty reduction, be it plastic, be it climate change, and also peace and the new world order and these kind of things. You need India. You need China also, by the way, because also every fifth person is Chinese. So we need a cooperative spirit. Now that's easier said than done, as we see in Ukraine and other places, or in places where you have hardliners. It's not all sunshine out there. We know, let's not be naive, but still we need friends. And India is a close friend. It's the biggest democracy in the world, and the relations between India and Europe, I guess, are warmer and warmer because we know we sit in the same boat and we need each other. And we have, apart from that, we have a lot of common interests.
How do you see the priority of Europe changing when it comes to India's foreign policies? How has that developed? Do you think even in terms of the smaller European nations today, that diplomatic engagement has intensified way more than it was in the 90s?
Sure, because the importance of India has grown in the last decade. And of course, every continent lives in its own surrounding. We have, as Germany, we have 10 neighbors, which are all very far from India. And India, you have, I don't know, 6 or 7 neighboring nations which are far from Germany. So we don't have common neighbors. We have not a common history. We have different languages, but still we live on the same planet, and we do have cultural ties. And between Europe and India, there have been long relationship between during the last 5,000 years. And this goes on until now. And these days, as I said before, I think the digital age and the age of seeing pandemics, seeing economic disasters around the globe, and seeing political turmoil and dictatorships around the globe, we moved closer together because we share a democratic system and we share respect for human rights. And so I think respect for parliaments. So there are a lot of common ground. Even we are far away and you speak your languages and we speak other languages in Europe, but there's a lot of common ground you will see.
The growing interest for Europe in the Indo-Pacific, of course, this is one of the region which has become the epicenter of geopolitics in many ways today, and it also accounts for nearly 60% of the world's population. Where does Europe kind of see itself, the role that it plays in the Indo-Pacific today?
If I speak as the German ambassador, then you will see we have been, or we are almost still the world champion in trade. So we depend totally our economy totally on trade, foreign trade. So and most of the trade goes, or a lot of the big part of the trade, I guess 45% or so, goes through the Indo-Pacific. So all our container ships, they run more than or half of them run through the Indo-Pacific. So we have an interest in a peaceful area here. So no illegal occupation of things, no disrespect of law of the sea, and peaceful settlement of disputes. That's important for us as a trading nation, but also as a peace-loving nation, which is interested, of course, in maintaining a world peaceful situation. It's important to contribute together with India that also this part of the world will be in a peaceful course. There have been turmoils in the area. You don't forget we have 4 nations in the possession of nuclear weapons, and there are border disputes, and there are some authoritarian regimes. That's why we have to keep an eye on all these areas in the world, and I think Germany is more active than before now because we notice the grown importance of Indo-Pacific.
But are the European nations really on the same page when it comes to the Indo-Pacific strategy, especially vis-a-vis China? There does seem to be significant differences in the approach of the member states.
this question can always be asked by you because you're a tough journalist. Two, I mean, different nations have, of course, also some nuances which are different. We all have some different, some are more trading partners, others are less, more, so that it's natural. But we have an Indo-Pacific European strategy, a common strategy of all the 28 countries. So this is already the common denominator. Some of us, like France, Germany, and the Netherlands, we have also bilateral strategies, which are very similar to the European. Now, of course, as the biggest trading nation, as the biggest economic nation in Europe, Germany has very close ties, economic ties also to China. But so does India, so do other countries. A smaller country who has not ties, economic ties with China or with India, of course, has a little bit different kind of visible interests in the area. But I think that's one of the good things of the European Union, that we share in solidarity our common interests. If some nation has more interest, then even the smaller nations take this up, and vice versa. So I think all in all, there might be nuances, but we have a common interest in the area.
Okay, before I open up the stage to the audience here and ask for their questions specifically on the issues of sustainable development goals, on how do you see the youth factor playing out, I do need to ask you a couple of questions on the burning crisis today, which is Ukraine. Ambassador, and I think we're having this conversation on a day when we have seen that special session of the United Nations Security Council. India too has taken a measured stand. Your thoughts, first of all, on, do you really see an invasion of Ukraine happening?
First of all, there's a huge build-up by the Russian army, which is uncalled for and not explicable. Why 100,000 soldiers there? But second, I think we have to try. We have to do everything possible to have a peaceful solution there. War and killings between soldiers is never a solution, never. And the price will be paid by both sides and will be tangible around the globe. So we have to walk the extra mile and the extra mile. And so far, I think there's still the two foreign ministers, Lavrov and the American foreign minister, are still on for a meeting on tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. I think we have to keep up the channels because, we lived in 40 years in separation between Eastern Bloc, Cold War, and the Western free world. And we maintained contact to the eastern side, because if you break up talks, then there's a dead-end road. You can't do that. And Germany, who was causing at least one world war, the last one, maybe even the first one, we have caused millions and millions and millions of death, killed people. We know how terrible military can be. Peaceful settlements afterwards, peacekeepers, that's a different thing, but we know in our own history what military can be misused for. So that's why we have a special relationship in our country towards the use of military force. That's why the last straw should always be a diplomatic solution. And as long as there are diplomats running around, and as long as there's hope, we should do this. Everyone should restrain from exacerbation of the situation, and we must avoid war. But international law must be respected, as the Minsk agreement. So there is a balance between one side, you have to respect international law, make sure that this is not an illegal action happening, but on the other side, use diplomatic channels as long as it's possible.
But what about Russia signing, President Putin signing the executive orders today on the renaming of basically the recognition of the Donetsk People's Republic and the Lugansk People's Republic? Where is it headed? Do you think this is still about posturing? What kind of questions does it cast about the future of NATO itself in the region?
Yeah, we said it's an illegal action to violate the Minsk agreement. So this is clear, and this is we have to respect the international law, and this is disrespecting international law. What are the consequences of this? This is discussed as we sit here in the European Union, whether there would be some, what kind of, I think, not whether, but what kind of sanction would be imposed now. Because if somebody breaches the international law, there should be consequences. And we have always said, yes, peaceful settlement, but also consequences, economic consequences, financial consequences, if somebody crosses a red line. And this is discussed as we speak here, so that's why I don't want to anticipate the results of these discussions in Brussels.
But for India, of course, India stands so far because India is a part of the Quad, where we have the other three partners. We have seen them come out categorically and condemn Russia's actions. India has taken a measured stand so far on this issue. It has been talking about diplomacy and de-escalation being the need of the hour. It also has that very tightrope balancing act that it does when it comes to the Tatsat sanctions from the US itself on the Russian acquisition of the Triumph missile. So, your thoughts on the Indian statements today? Is how is Europe looking at it? How is Germany looking at it?
I think it would not be a good move to comment here on the stage what the Indian position is like. I think you should ask an Indian colleague there, the Security Council, but very many of these words were also used by ourselves, restrained from escalation and using all the diplomatic efforts. Now, all the other questions, was this an illegal act by Putin and others, you would have to ask the Indian government. I said for us, there's a red line which was crossed, but the consequences we will discuss right now.
Germany will be completely aligned with the US-led West actions on
we discussed
Russia.
This exactly. We have discussed this before. We have said if Russia crosses a red line, then there will be consequences, and we will make public the consequences after such an action has done. And these discussions are now happening, I guess, in the NATO, but especially in the European Union, including by your foreign minister, by the way, who happens to be in Brussels at the moment for Indo-Pacific discussions. But I can imagine that in the couloirs, there will be also Ukraine very high on the agenda.
Just one last question on this. If hypothetically, if the tensions continue and if they only intensify, how do you see this impacting the European interest in Indo-Pacific? Would it lead to a lesser appetite, maybe, for the European presence on the Indo-Pacific itself? And also, how do you see it impacting, especially when it comes to the global oil prices, the global gas situation? If the situation does not stabilize anytime soon.
Sure. I mean, that's what we said from the beginning. Why is Russia, bringing 100,000 people encircling the Ukraine? This leads to a lot of tension and to the danger that there might be a conflict there. And we don't need a conflict because it will have repercussions on the international oil price, on the global peace, on many things. So don't do that. But still, he made this speech yesterday, so we will see how we react without bringing the whole world into financial or economic turbulences. So I think that's the balanced way we have to do. We have to see what we can do. But again, it was not us who brought this up.
Okay, all hopes for now, of course, pinned on the Normandy process, the Minsk agreement. Let's see where it heads out. Let me see a few hands now. If any of you has a question, please raise your hands and you can wait for the mic. Anybody in the audience? Yes, just introduce yourself quickly and your question.
Greetings of the day, Ambassador. My name is Ayan, and I'm from Amity Institute of Defense and Strategic Studies. My question for you is that in the post-COVID scenario, where do we see the tandem of India and Germany going forward in the aspects of the 4 lines of youth population that we have at this point of time, especially in the post-COVID scenarios when universities and education have been hit hard, and we have been focusing more upon the inward approach. So where do we see this tandem going further?
I think COVID has made it clear to everyone that we have to find international solutions, cooperative solutions where we work together nations. One nation can't do this alone. We have seen India has been a producer of vaccines, but it has also been an exporter of vaccines, and so the European countries have been financially contributing to the COVAX, which is a platform of developed countries which finance the vaccines for developing countries. So there's been a lot of connectivity between the different states, but we have also seen that the chain of supply have been stopped because the ingredients for the production you needed here in India were stopped by the US first and then by China, by others, because everyone was thinking of himself. So we have to find a way in the future how to deal with this. I think WHO is already on that. I've been working very closely during the time of Ebola with Angela Merkel, and there we already started a better connectivity between the states and WHO when it comes to pandemics. But the restart after COVID also gives us a chance because we can do it better restarting. Greener, more developing goals minded. So we can say Yamuna was totally clean during this month. Now let's not pollute it again, at least not in that measure that we had before, or the air in Delhi. Remember how relatively good it was. Let's not go back to the bad times. And this applies to many, many things in the world. We have seen how things could be, kind of a dream. Well, I mean, it's still a drastic word because people were dying, but in the aspect of how we could live in a better world, it showed us also some way. So let's see that we have a restart of the economy, of some things in societies where we appreciate more what we have seen during COVID times.
Anyone else? Yes, I can see two hands raised there.
Greetings to
Sorry,
the.
can you just stand up so that my camera can
Alright,
show the
yeah.
view? Thank you.
Greetings to this August gathering. So as we talk about the SDGs, few days ago I was part of a student-led initiative and was talking to kids in the very nearby Basti behind the Zakir Hussain College. And one of the very pertinent questions that kids had was, even if you're talking about sanitation and water, where do we have the accessibility to this? So what is your take on this as nation states, as community, as society? How is that we will be able to enable that the kids, everybody rather, has accessibility to water, sanitation? These are very basic needs. And my second question, very different to my previous one, would be how do you see the Nord Stream 2? While we have a very tense situation, as we've already discussed, with Russia and Ukraine, and European sanctions being listed out there if there's an invasion. What's your take on that? Thank you.
Did you have a related question to this?
Something like that.
Okay, let's just take this question, then I'll go back to the gentleman after he has answered both the questions. Yeah, Inko Denishan.
Guten Tag, Ambassador. So my question is on the Ukrainian crisis. Because Germany has refused to supply weapons to Ukraine amid the concerns, which is a priority for Ukraine right now, wherein other European countries are sending their fighter jets and arms and ammunition, Europe's reluctancy to send weapons, do you think that would hamper future German and Ukrainian relations, which is considered as a indirect victory for Russia right now?
Three very smart questions, Ambassador. The floor is all yours.
You see, I should have known earlier that you are sitting on the lights because I thought this would be easygoing questions about a red ambassador car or something, and now we are deep into this question. Let me start with the Ukraine first. Let me start with the Nord Stream sanctions. As I said, since we are sitting here and discussions happening right now in Brussels and anywhere in Europe, how we react on Putin's speech from yesterday, I don't want to anticipate that. But we have said everything is on the table. So let me leave it at that. Now on the weapons export. You know, Germany is maybe the biggest economic supporter of Ukraine. We have done a lot of economic aid to Ukraine. Let's also step back a second. As I was mentioning, in the Second World War, German Nazis have killed millions of Russian civilians and soldiers, and also at that time Ukraine Russians. At that time they were Soviet Union. So we do have a very sensitive history in this whole area. That's why it is so dear to us, I guess, to have sensitive reactions. if you notice, there's one topic in German history or in German policy, which is our past of Holocaust and of Nazi regime. This determines our relationship towards Israel, but also it explains a bit why we are a bit reluctant on weapon exports. Because we know what weapon can do, we have seen it through the Nazi time. That's why our whole public discussions, parliament, ministries, whatever government is there, is reluctant in transferring weapons or exporting weapons into zones of danger or zones of military hot conflicts. Within the NATO, yes, but outside the NATO, we are very reluctant to do so because we know how weapons can work and how they can be used or misused. That explains a bit why we are reluctant to do weapon exports into these conflict zones. And this goes with every government. That's also in this case. But our Minister of Defense has already said we help other allies of us to do that. But we do such a lot from the diplomatic side to economic side to support Ukraine. And they get weapons from other sides. So I think it's not the main question whether they get weapons from Germany. They do get weapons, and we support them financially and economically.
There was a question on not just about, we talk about sustainable, but what about equitable and accessible development, and especially at a time in the post-pandemic world where all these Oxfam reports, World Bank reports are pointing to the growing inequalities, the deep divides that have come in, especially in a country like India. How do you go about addressing them?
I mean, my whole political background is a social political background, so this is what determines my political agenda since I'm a political thinking person. How can we make this world a better place for everyone? As I said before, for the rickshaw pullers as one, as well as someone who lives in Bollywood. So how do you do this? By a revolution or by distribution, forceful distribution from the rich to the poor, or by a social democratic system, or there are a lot of systems which tried exactly to do this, to bridge exactly this gap. No one has, I guess, the perfect solution. They say northern European countries are a bit more into that, others are a bit less. But the important thing is that, as you mentioned, there's so much youth in this world, the majority is youth, and just by the fact that you are born in a slum in Mumbai, this is not your fault. This is by a cosmic coincidence or by the biological coincidence. The same that I'm born in Munich as son in a mediumly rich family, it's not my merit, it's a coincidence. So I could not walk in this world with an arrogance or an attitude and say, oh, we are just rich. How are these poor people doing? No, because I could be in the shoes of this poor person in Mumbai. So this makes my whole life humble. Makes me humble the whole life, and that's why I struggle the whole life when I see people with attitudes which think richness and luxury is God given to them. It's not. If you got it from your parents, be happy, but there have to be mechanisms which have a social distributions. And UN is one of the poverty reduction systems. But every country has to find a way how they do this in a social way, through unions, through NGOs, through government policy, through ministries, through responsible politicians. You are all voters. You can vote in those politicians who provide a fair social distribution. If somebody doesn't do it, don't vote for him. I mean, I'm not saying whom you should vote for, but generally, I vote not for someone in Germany who is not coming up with a social question in her mind.
Yes, as young, of course, people, you have a great responsibility with the way you vote and choose to vote. Somebody there wanted to ask a question? Yes.
Hello, sir. My question is, in the scenario of Ukraine-Russia conflict, NATO has conducted drills in Ukraine in the last 5 years, and the provocation moves by the US and UK by crossing the Taiwan Strait and Dardanelles. Is not that justify the concern of the President Putin?
I don't. If you allow me, I don't want to go into all these historical details right now because I'm sitting here in New Delhi and this conflict is happening now like 10,000 kilometers away, and people in the United Nations and in Brussels, in the NATO and in the EU are discussing this. I don't want to add anything on this. Is a very sensitive topic, so I think I better leave it at that.
But has the fear of war been exaggerated? I mean, we've also seen a lot of memes doing the round about President Putin, and in some of those memes, he actually reminds us of maybe the actor Rajnikant. The Indian audience would relate to it, the Southern legend. But has the war factor been exaggerated in a sense that tomorrow, if there is no war, there could be credit taking that look, it is our diplomatic pressure that forced the Russians to backtrack?
The answer is yes. There has been a lot of media participation in this and drastic words from both sides, but it's all part of the conflict, I guess. How do you, if the West thinks Putin might proceed along a kind of a scheme, so next stop would be you provoke any attack. Next thing would be you to contribute this to this and this forces. If you make this public, that's I think was the American thinking. If you make this public, then maybe the other side wouldn't do it. Now he did it, and maybe so. Let's see what's the next step. But as I said, I don't want to comment on tactics of Washington and of Moscow. I just see that there was a build-up, an unnecessary, inexplicable build-up of 100,000 soldiers around Ukraine. Explain me why this had to happen. Is this a provocation? Why was this provocation there? So, and then we talk about all the rest. But I think that's as much as I say here. It's maybe not the best point to discuss this particular details here and today. Since, by the way, things are evolving. What I haven't seen for 2-3 hours what's the latest news. So things can be, accelerating or getting a bit more peaceful. We will see, but I don't want to do hasty conclusions.
We just have the last couple of minutes. Is there anybody else? Yes, please go ahead. Ask your question.
Greetings, Ambassador. I'm Ashrika Parathi from the University of Sydney. I have a question regarding the how we can help the youth achieve SDGs. Owing to the COVID-19 pandemic, the prospects of young people have plummeted in the financial as well as labor markets, especially in low-income countries. Given the fact that young people are often seen as drivers of development all around the world, what can be done to enable their potential? And can we do something to enable economic citizenship, which has been quoted by the World Economic Forum?
Well, I think one thing is that every government should enable the talented youth or youth to go to good schools and to choose those talented to go even to universities and to provide this kind of educational system. For those countries who are richer, like the European countries, it's a kind of an, I would say, obligation to provide scholarships and to provide places for studies. So we have 30,000 Indian students studying in Germany, but you have wonderful universities here, by the way. You have many switched on brains. So we have to, what we said in power, equal distribution of wealth, or not equal, but fair distribution of wealth. We should also have fair access to education, because education is the root cause for the rest of your life. And whether you're rickshaw puller afterwards or whether you're a university degree person, it depends on your surrounding and if there's a good school and this kind of thing. So I think every state should work on a good educational system, and we should think out of the box, as we do already since years, to have startups to give. You have a very good culture in India, also a failing culture. that be also to fail. Out of 10 tries, maybe 8 are failures, but 2 are excellent. Now, if you wait only for perfect trials, and then, like Europeans very often do, India, you have more, this risk-taking chain in you. I think that's a very good one. So, out of the box thinking for youth, giving them the chance also to sometimes not succeed in their endeavors, but then start again, get up again. I think that's very important.
On hindsight, Ambassador, do you think the way the issue of the students' visas became embroiled in an entire controversy with Germany during the pandemic, could that have been handled in a different way? What was the biggest takeaway from this pandemic, for moving forward on the education sector, coming to collaboration with a country like India?
I remember we had quite a number of interviews on that when it was a hot topic. I mean, at that time, I think every nation tried to protect their own, not their own passport holders, but the people who lived in that country, even Indians who lived in Germany. We tried to make sure that very dangerous mutations of the virus would enter into Germany and then infect everyone and then cause more death, including Indians who lived in Germany. India did the same. Until now, we have only flight bubbles. We don't have regular flights. We have a flight bubble. We need to agree on every flight, which will be hopefully lifted after 2 years now. But every country tried sort of protecting. It's a reflex which we saw everywhere. No one was an exception, I guess. And so, in the hindsight, I would say we could have be a bit more not relaxed, because it was necessary to be on the lookout. But we fought, as you remember, we fought every second day with my ministry. It was not Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but it was Health, and it was in domestic affairs, like in India. A lot, and then the daily administration. So in our case, it's our different cities administration. It was a complex issue. We tried to keep the borders more open than the health institutions did in Germany, and vice versa in India. So the lessons we learned from that is we have to anticipate these pandemics more and see that we have a common approach to it and explain it better to the population.
Right. And of course, Ambassador here, in conclusion, is someone who's been one of those rare voices that was constantly engaging with young students on these complicated issues, was not shying away from answering their questions. And Ambassador Lindner is somebody who also plays the piano beautifully. I've had the privilege of listening to him at his residence. And as I said, he's one of our most charming cultural brand ambassadors today. So, a final question to you, Ambassador, as you are exploring India once again with a vengeance, if I may say so, once, these COVID restrictions are gone now, what's on your bucket list right now for the next 2-3 key places that you really want to be in India?
A few months ago, at the beginning of the year, I thought these COVID restrictions might end maybe soon. Let's make a bucket list. And the bucket list had like 40 points there. And believe it or not, every week I'm traveling. Every week. I just came back from Meghalaya. You name it. I've mostly been there. In places many people have never heard of. The living root trees in Meghalaya. My gosh, what a sight. My gosh. Or the shipwrecking yard in Gujarat, where you have 82 skeletons of ships. Because, as you may not know, 30% of all the world big shipwrecks come to India. It's a huge industry there. So many things. If you open your eyes, that's one. Let me end with this. I've been foreign secretary before I came to this country, so I've been to most of the countries on this globe. I don't say it because you're all Indians, but I have to say it's the most beautiful country, the most diverse country of this planet. You can find 10 world religions here. You can find snow, of course, and you can find the Lakshadweep. And then you can find the most beautiful artistic buildings, landscape, incredible, the people, the food. And find one thing which you don't find in many countries, which is the spirituality. Because it very often happens that I have, let's say, some representative of Tata coming to me, the residents, serious topic, and he comes in the morning and has his tika here. So I think, okay, you did your puja, and then we start from the word puja. Yes, we come to a discussion, where do we go after death? Where did we come before we were born? Why are you and me, and these questions. And we end up 45 minutes discussion this. And just before he leaves, oh, by the way, this was my topic here. So he comes with this economic topic. So spirituality, even in the richest and in the poorest soul, is here. It's happening here. It's all a part of India. So I would have, been stationed here for 10 years to grasp the DNA of India, but I need a whole life, I guess.
And we would love to have you as an honorary Indian itself here. But thank you so much, Ambassador Walter Lindner, for addressing all the questions and for, of course,